So I just finished the Seven Deadly Sins anime, and honestly, absolute peak. You know, I was one of the people who kind of got brainwashed, I guess you could say, or became a naysayer when it came to about season 3 to season 4. And spoilers ahead if you haven't watched it, but basically in season 3 and season 4, they start explaining more of the story. They go more in depth. They start just picking it away and you start uncovering what's going on. And like most people, I was like, man, this is boring. Especially when you just went through the first few seasons of just pure fighting, combat, and like all that stuff. It would be essentially like imagine if you watched Jujutsu Kaisen only season 2 and then you skipped like all of the talking and everything that happens in season 1 and a little bit of the lore essentially. Like, then yeah, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, this is boring. And that's kind of how it was for me for a really long time. But I just rewatched the entire thing. I've literally just finished it before I recorded this video. And it is so insanely good on the writing. Now, do I think the story could have been fleshed out maybe a tiny bit more in the anime? Yeah, 100%. And like I said, spoilers ahead. So, when you get into the story, I think the biggest things that are kind of like little plot holes here and there was not understanding exactly why the Holy War was going on, I guess. Like outside of like basically them just disliking each other. I kind of like to know an origin of a war, essentially. Like if you look at history and real life, most of the time you can be like, okay, this is basically what started the war, outside of just liking or disliking something. So I think that could have been fleshed out a little bit more. And then obviously they have chaos now, which chaos at the end of the day, if you don't know what chaos is basically the absolute neutral of the world. It is good and evil. There's no, oh, well, this is superiorly bad or this is superiorly good. It's literally the perfect balance of both of them, essentially. And I think chaos wasn't fleshed out at all. I really wish that maybe they showed that a little bit more when it came to like Merlin or something like that in the show. Maybe showing why she was so intrigued with chaos or something like that outside of like the little petty story arc they gave, because I feel like to essentially have a 3,000+ year plot, and that is the plot of this of Seven Deadly Sins, is a 3,000 year plot essentially manifested by Merlin herself to bring chaos to the world. It gets to the point where you're like, okay, well, why? And then they're like, well, she was sad and lonely and her heart was empty. Yeah, but like, why? What, like, what else was going on? So I think stuff like that could have been a little bit better. But man, everything else was amazing throughout the entire anime, basically. And I might go and might look into the lore a little bit more, like in the manga or whatever, just so that way I can flush out, the things I have complaints about. But when it came to like Escanor, dude, Escanor's story was like top tier, and I think how they put it was a little bit rushed. I'll say, because how they rushed it was essentially like, well, he's sacrificing himself, so like let's do like half an episode explaining his background, which is fair enough, right? But like Escanor's story just in general is really, really, really good. The only thing I do wish is obviously they maybe flushed out his love for Merlin a little bit more, of like why he loved Merlin so much. But he like being willing to sacrifice himself for basically the only people that have ever cared about him, and like showing the backstory of why they're the only people and how they saved his life and like all this stuff was amazing. I never saw that scene though, and maybe I just blanked it out of my memory, where he stood toe to toe with the Demon King. Like there is that scene when they're fighting the Demon King at the end, obviously, where him and the Demon King are going blow for blow. But how everybody hyped this up to me was like Escanor soloed the Demon King. Like nobody helped him or anything. Like Escanor just like pulled up on the Demon King and went, I am Escanor. Boom, and just like one tapped him. That didn't happen. I don't know where that assumption came from, but yeah, watch it for yourself because it's definitely does not work that way. But I love the fact that every single time Escanor is on screen, you basically know that you're about to get hit with the biggest aura farm of your entire career that you'll ever see in your entire life, and it really sucks that he ends up dying in the story at the end of the day because I feel like they probably could have left him alive in some shape or form. You know, they could have literally just made it where like he became like crippled or something like that. Like he would never use magic, never walk again, like something like that. You know, and like just had him there, it kind of in the background. And I think that would be cool. It'd still be sad, but it would be cool. Where I feel like his ultimate sacrifice could have been prevented if the angel he got his grace from could have I don't know, decide to fight instead of him. The angel's like, Escanor, hmm, yeah, your life force is gonna like burn out if you use my power. Okay, here you go. And then they just like shake hands and he gives them the power. It's like, okay, well, why not just give it to the angel who has infinitely more life force than Escanor and knows how to use the power infinitely 10 times better than Escanor and just have him like go crazy because that's why that angel is so like powerful because he already is like peak of the angel race essentially as it is, and then he has Escanor's power on top of that. So or he has his power, but you know it's Escanor's. So he literally could have been in the fight over Escanor and probably like disintegrated it or something like that. Now it would be cool. I think like a different plot line is just like a little fan theory, I guess that would be cool. Is if in that fight, if they would have had the angel fight instead, and then maybe the angel was like got beat up like really bad or something like that, and Escanor was able to kind of uh, be granted the grace temporarily. I think that would have been fine. I don't know. I think allowing him to just throw his life away it was a little irritating to me. Besides that, I mean, the plots was just really good throughout it. You know, like I said, when I was younger, I did do a bit of the complaining behind like the filler arcs, the filler episodes, and stuff like that. But I think now, when it comes to story building behind any show, any anime, whether that's Breaking Bad or Seven Deadly Sins, whatever it is, it's like I really, really enjoy the story stuff. And if you haven't watched like a show in a long time, and maybe you were like, yeah, this show was kind of bad, I would honestly recommend going back and rewatching it and paying attention to the plot a little bit more because 9 times out of 10, the show will be way, way better than you remember it just because, like, maybe you've grown as a person. I think that's how it is for me a lot of the time, especially with like Seven Deadly Sins is a great example where I hated on it. You know, I was one of those people. Oh, well, past season 3, it's the mid sins or whatever, and I never really understand like why I clocked that in my brain so much. But after all this time, I can say like it's peak. And if you like hate the Seven Deadly Sins or something like that, or maybe you were the same as me, where you're like, well, season 3 just snooze fest. Maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes I could agree with because it is a lot of just like uh background arc stuff, right? Especially when they go into like Deanne and King go into the past and get like the full story arc. It is a little bit of that storytelling filler, I guess you could say. But you understand so much more in depth what everything is happening and why everything is happening like after that. Now, I will say I wish that Zeldris actually ended up becoming the Demon King because like I said I didn't know anything about it outside of like season 1. So I do wish that Zeldris would have became the Demon King. I think it would have been cool if Meliodas would have used like what is his like transcendent power essentially to reform the 10 Commandments and then give them to Zeldris at the end of the day to make him like 10 times more powerful, and then he would have became the Demon King, and then you know that just would have been a cool comparison. You know, you have Meliodas, basically the king of Britannia, or the king of the overworld, essentially. And then you would have Arthur, the king of chaos, and then you would have Zeldris, the king of the demons. And that would have been just a so cool story arc. Now, I do know there is another anime after this, which is the Four Horsemen or whatever. Takes place like basically right after Seven Deadly Sins. I'm gonna watch that next, so we'll probably do another video over that in like maybe a week or two. When I finish that. But yeah, Seven Deadly Sins, absolute peak. Um, what else? Yeah, I mean that's really it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they flush out the story of Chaos and the Four Horsemen, because I don't know anything about the Four Horsemen besides obviously Meliodas' son is a part of it because he's on the cover. So I feel like that's pretty obvious. But yeah. But let me know what you guys think about Seven Deadly Sins. Maybe you were like me. Maybe you just absolutely hate it for so long, and maybe you got to give it a little bit of a rewatch to see how good it really is. Maybe you're someone who already loves it, but yeah, either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Peace.